please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
The Modi government today came good on one of its poll promises. It has decided to hike the minimum support price for 14 Kharif crops. So what exactly are Kharif crops? These are the crops which are cultivated during the rainy season between the months of June to October. Remember, earlier this year, the Union Minister Arun Jaitley in its budget speech had promised to give farmers a minimum support price of 1.5 times of the cost of production. So to what extent would today's announcement boost food grain output? Also, what are the concerns as far as the fiscal slippages are concerned? We discuss that and more in the next half an hour. But first, we spoke to central ministers. Ramvilas Paswan and Harsimrat Kaur Badal exclusively spoke to us after the Union Cabinet approval came through. Let's listen in.
Now, this distressed farmer is straight away going to get at least 8 to 10,000 rupees per acre more. So with the boost in this rural economy which will come when he's got more money to spend is going to actually transform the entire rural and the landscape of the entire country.
We have increased that ratio and it is minimum and we have gone up to 96 to 97%.
Any increase is welcome, but we must understand that an MSP announcement by the government does not necessarily translate to an increase in the market price.
Well, those, of course, are the initial reactions coming in from the ministers. But to get talking on the same, we are now joined by Shobna Patnaik, who's agricultural secchi, and he joins us live on the show. Mr. Patnaik, hi, thank you so much for joining us, sir. First of all, clearly a historical step, and everybody has applauded it to begin with. But, you know, as we move ahead, it is a price of production to farmers, but only and if it were implemented. That really is the next step that most of the industry has begun to talk about already.
Yes.
So, you know,
I would say this is a very historic occasion, and MSP, pardon?
Sure, sir, go on.
I cannot hear you.
Mr. Patnaik, I really wanted to know that the first big step, of course, now has been taken. The next, of course, would be the implementation of it. What we understand right now is that there are very limited states, less than 30% farmers who actually benefit from MSP. So what is the plan really with the government to ensure that it is spread out pan-India?
See, I must tell you, MSP traditionally has been used as a signal to the farmers to grow a certain crop in a certain way. And in fact, the biggest example of the success of MSP was witnessed in the last 2 years when the MSP was substantially hiked in respect of the pulses. And the pulse crop, which was prevailing at 17 million tons, rose to 23 million tons. And this particular bumper production was repeated year after year. In fact, there has been a pulse boom because to a great extent the MSP is responsible for this. In the past also, whenever MSP is declared, let's take the example of wheat and paddy, the Kisans have rose to the occasion, and because of a very good procurement mechanism which exists through the Food Corporation of India, both the areas and yield have gone up, and today we have a very good buffer stock in terms of the wheat and paddy, and we are very robust mechanism to ensure that it is distributed through the public distribution system, and it has formed the core of our food security. So I strongly believe that MSP is a good weapon to signal to the farmers to grow crops, and also there are mechanisms in place which ensures that the mechanism can really secure the interest of the farmers.
Sure.
By giving these two examples are only the part of the story, but I am certain now that 23 different crops has been come within the ambit, out of which 14 crops have been earmarked for the Kharif season. it's a big event, and it's a historic event for the agriculture and the farmers of this country.
So your point is well taken, and as you said that the government has been procuring some of these crops, there are buffer stocks that have been created freshly for some of those commodities in the last few years. But would you say that there are problems there as well? How much can the government procure? What method are we looking at? There are problems of storage. I mean, the government clearly can't become a hoarder there. What are the implications? What are the next steps? What is the strategy from here on now about this?
See, the strategy is, India has always a burgeoning population and the demand keeps rising, and this is true of most of the crops. Apart from wheat and paddy, the demand for pulses, oilseeds is constantly on the rise. So we are very hopeful that the the minimum support price having been increased, it will encourage the farmers to grow more and to take real interest in using the right variety of seeds and produce more. And the market mechanisms will correct itself, because we have taken a number of steps to reform of the market. One is we have carried out certain APMC reforms. The INAM, the 85 markets have been connected to INAM. Very recently there was a budget announcement that we are going to strengthen the infrastructure of the Gramin agricultural markets, the primary rural markets, or what we call as Gramin Hearts. That's going to give more opportunity for the farmers to sell his goods in the nearest marketplace. And we have taken a number of other policy decisions, like giving income tax exemptions to farmer producer organizations, and these are actually going to empower the farmers in a big way. They are going to set up supply chain logistics. Farmers are going to be actively get connected to not only supply chain but also to value chain mechanisms, and this will definitely place the farmers on a firmer foot to market their produce. So I am certain that different parallel initiatives taken by the government will encourage the farmers to really market this, and the MSP mechanism will show its results in the coming days. The question arises is, what happens if the prevailing price is below MSP? That is the only thing we should be concerned. If the prevailing market price is below MSP, then there is a need for the government to step in. But if the prevailing price is above MSP, then there is nothing that government needs to do. The market takes care of itself. And this you are very much familiar with it, and I need not add. But we are looking towards a robust mechanism in the market mechanism, so that it takes care of it. Apart from that, much of the price is also dependent on global situations. If there is a rise in the price of agricultural commodities globally, then anyway India stands in really on a position of strength to even export to other countries. Apart from that, we also are looking towards countries in the Gulf, countries of the Southeast Asia, where our agricultural commodities can really be sent. So if that is done, then definitely farmers will definitely take advantage of this new dynamics.
Sure, sir. So I have a two-part question on what you said, really. One, of course, is what is the kind of reach that the government is looking at in sense of farmers? Because what we understand right now is that that reach is very limited. The big farmers and the FPOs, of course, has been a blessing. But the smaller, medium, marginal farmers is something who haven't been able to benefit out of the MSP for the longest time. And the other thing that you pointed out, last couple of years, we have seen the prevailing prices below MSP, and even as we have seen a hike in MSP for this year, the chances are that some of the crops, especially where we are looking at a higher sowing, higher crop estimates, could actually see the same fate yet again.
See, I a little bit differ from you in this regard, because if you take the example of the pulse farmers, basically they are small and marginal farmers. They earn a livelihood in the driest part of the country. In fact, most of these crops are not irrigated. In other words, these are the people who live in unirrigated lands. dependent quietly on the monsoon. In fact, our mechanism has been quite good, for which it has been signaled. That is why the small and marginal farmers in some of the most driest area have grown pulses, for which we have a excess of pulse production. So it is not true to say that we have not rose to the occasion. And even if we reach out to 30% of the farmers, when government starts procuring in the market, there has a upward revision in the prices in the mandis. So this has been our experience, and let me tell you, whatever we may produce, the marketable surplus is close to 30% or 40%. So even if we reach out to 30-40% of the farmers and buy their produce, then definitely there is an upward shift in the price, and soon the commodities go beyond the MSP, and there is no need to procure it from the farmers, because the market mechanism take care of itself.
Sure.
So we are very hopeful that this is only a stimulus to the farmers.
Fair point.
The market will definitely bounce back, and we are hopeful that this will be addressed properly.
Sure,
in case it is not addressed, the government is always ready there to back it up.
That is glad to know, sir. You know, another thing is that, of course, you talked about the pulses part of it also. We have seen the productivity increase, but remuneration has been a bit of a question mark there. But I also want to talk about the other sector. Through the day, we have been talking to various corporates as well, who use many of these commodities as their raw material. And their concern was because when you talk about paddy to a final product, as in sense of rice, and then export of that, there is a bit of a concern that we might get uncompetitive into the international markets. Are you looking at their concerns too?
See, let me tell you, it is not such a, people are used to a very comfortable level of pricing for the last so many years at the cost of the farmers. So this is the first time an opportunity is given to the farmers to actually sell their produce at a higher price, and the consumer is a little reluctant to buy it from them. But I do not think that a 200 rupees rise in the paddy itself will make the Indian paddy uncompetitive in the world market.
Okay.
Because you know the paddy is of two different types. One is the basmati, for which Indian basmati was known all over the world, and that market anyway does not get affected at all.
Sure.
The question would come for non-basmati rice. Even non-basmati rice is procured at a very low price from the farmers. So this 200 rupees per quintal is not such a big thing which will obliterate the interest of the exporters. We are hopeful that this will and the question is, many of the other countries put non-tariff barriers in terms of pesticide residue and things like that. In fact, we should be addressing those issues rather than only on pricing. Because many of our exports are limited because of the non-tariff barriers imposed by other countries.
Sure. Sir, I also want to put in another question. You know, the farmers, of course, have gone through quite a bit. We've seen protest and seeing them actually stage a lot of they've been trying to reach to the ministry in various ways and forms there. This MSP increase clearly is not an immediate relief, because one, of course, this is one of the ways to do it, but we still don't know how it would be implemented. It's still a couple of months away to the harvest. The government still needs to come out with the methodology and how various states are going to implement this MSP, whether they're going to procure it, whether it's going to be the Bhavantar Yojana, direct credit to the farmers' accounts. So there are various, deliberations still on this. What is the clarity that you can provide to us on that?
See, I can tell you with certainty that we are in touch with the various state governments and the states. In fact, much of the feedback that we have obtained from the states, they are fully on board with the rise in the MSP. So that means the state government is going to actively pursue follow-up action on this, and we are very hopeful that state government will also cooperate with us in terms of implementing the MSP mechanism. But apart from that, let me tell you, the government's role only comes when the price is below MSP.
Right.
If the price is above MSP, there is nothing that government needs to do. Of course, it is for wheat and paddy. We have a very robust mechanism. We are procuring these two commodities for our food security needs to meet the mandate of the National Food Security Act, and therefore there is no problem. And but yes, our interest is to rope in more number of agencies to be participants in this process. So far as the central level is concerned, the central government level, it is the NAFED, the Food Corporation of India and the Small Farmers Agri Consortium. But apart from that, at the state level, there are various marketing federations and different civil supplies corporations who also get into this particular mechanism. In fact, the state governments have been very proactive. When last year we announced MSP for certain pulses, many state government came in and added their bonuses from out of their own budget to see that procurement mechanism is further strengthened. Seeing the enthusiasm of the state government, we are also equally enthused to give a better price to the farmers.
Sure,
so there
sir.
has been active cooperation both between the central government and state government, and we are very hopeful that this particular apprehension that you have in mind is not going to arise.
All right, sir. I'm just hoping for that, you know, because the states also are over-borrowed when it comes to agriculture and various other projects. So really hoping for the best. And thank you so much for joining us today and clarifying a lot of issues that I have put forth to you. Thank you so much. With that, it's time for a short break, but stay tuned. On the other side of the show, we will also talk to other stakeholders regarding this MSP decision. Speaking to us also, listen to what Harsh Mariwala of Marico is saying on the aspect.
Current MSP prices are higher than the market prices. Now, if you have an increased MSP prices, they'll be much more higher than the market prices. Does the government have the funds, the infrastructure in terms of storage, buying, if the current prices are lower than MSP? At one level, it may just remain on paper, you know, because if the government is not buying at higher prices, or if there is overall price stable in case of oil it doesn't go up, then it just remains on paper. And I wish that the government had spent more energy in terms of helping farmer improve productivity.
Well, we've heard the ministry talk on how they need or looking to tackle the MSP and how they actually are ensuring that the farmers do get benefit of that. But let's also get into the conversation. Atul Chaturvedi, who's President, SCA and CEO at Adani Wilmar. We also are joined by Mr. M.K. Dhanuka, MD Dhanuka Agritech. Gentlemen, hi, and thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Dhanuka, your reaction first. We have seen the ministers talk about it. We've seen on how the corporates have reacted to it as well. What is your first reaction on the MSP hike, and how much of a game changer really that is for the corporate world who deals into agriculture commodities?
First of all, I would like to congratulate government for this wonderful initiative of increasing the MSP to this level. This was the demand of the farmers from a long time, and the industry welcomes the government's step. The only challenge is that how the government is going to implement it. The maximum number of farmers should get the benefit of this MSP, and it has happened earlier that the farmers has to sell their produce in the market at market prices which were lower than the MSP prices. So government should basically create mechanism that the farmers should get the benefit of this MSP, so that he is inclined to produce more, and India can make lot of exports also for the surplus produce.
Well, absolutely. Export is something that India, of course, will have to look at, as the Agri-Secretary also was saying that they are looking at newer markets there. But Mr. Chaturvedi, what is your sense, especially when it comes to oil seeds? We have seen the duty changes a lot. The sowing numbers are out. With the kind of MSP hikes that we have seen, how is this industry reacting?
No, as President of C, we definitely welcome the initiative of increasing the MSP on soya, sunflower and groundnut. But having said that, I think the real impact will only be in soya. As far as sunflower is concerned, we hardly produce anything worth the name. So sunflower increasing or decreasing prices has no value. But groundnut, my fear is that groundnut as an oilseed is no longer relevant. It is more a dry fruit, and as a dry fruit, we have been exporting almost 600,000 to 700,000 tons of hand-picked groundnut seeds. But now with the groundnut prices being jacked up, probably exports might be a little bit of a challenge. But what we are also worried about is as to how the whole MSP is going to get implemented. Our fear is that the government will have to keep the duties, imported oil duties, very high, just to ensure that the market prices remain relevant. Otherwise, you might have a situation where the poor government ends up buying all commodities, and that could be disastrous.
Oh, well.
But overall, what we think is that more and more countries are now becoming much more inward-looking, and same goes with India.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to debate that, but I'm going to stick on the
higher
MSP.
prices for the domestic.
Yeah. So, you know, if I had to come to both of you, and starting with you, Mr. Dhanuka first, what would you suggest to the government and how it really needs to implement this right now? So, of course, we are all applauding it, but what is a bigger concern for you when you look at the way it has been put out? Because how it is going to be implemented is something that the government is still deciding upon. So, what is that one thing that you would want to suggest to the government to ensure that this works easily?
Apart from the rice and wheat, I think government is not doing much procurement of the food grain items, bajra, jowar or other items. But what happened in Madhya Pradesh, that is an example, and government should implement in case the market prices are lower. The Madhya Pradesh government has given the differential amount directly in the accounts of the farmers wherever they have sold their crops at below the MSP prices, and the differential amount was credited to their account. So similarly, the central government should, along with the state government, should come out with a mechanism that in case the farmer has to sell the crops in the market at lower prices than the market prices, than the MSP, then the differential amount should be given to the farmers.
Mr. Chaturvedi, what is your sense? Because clearly this is not an immediate relief. This is one of the things that the government has done. There still are the stuff about infrastructure, manpower, technology. Indian land, only 40% of that is irrigated. So how much difference just the hike in MSP really is going to make in the farmers' lives?
No, MSP-driven production has definitely worked wonders in the past. The rice and wheat is a classic example, and now recently you have the pulses, which are also now going through the roof as far as the production is concerned. My only concern is that oilseed has never been on the radar of the policy makers, and for a change we find that now the policy makers have started looking at oilseeds. In fact, on the implementation side, I would possibly go with the Bhavantar scheme of Madhya Pradesh, which in spite of whatever hiccups they would have gone through, I'm sure that was the first year and they would have learned quite a lot. That was possibly one of the best schemes, because then the government is not saddled with these stocks and they allow the market forces to run their own course. So that possibly is a wonderful suggestion. The other thing which I wanted to put across is that I heard the Agriculture Secretary talking about MSP as an incentive to produce more for the farmers. I only wish that this MSP is also taken as a tool to signal to the farmers what to produce, what not to produce.
Sure.
If only the Punjab and Haryana farmers were to start producing a little bit of maize more and a little bit of rapeseed more, so our import dependence might actually come off. So we would use it as a signal also for the farmers.
Oh, well, absolutely. The production clearly has increased because of
Not only as an incentive,
MSP.
but a disincentive as well.
Oh, yes. The production, of course, has been increasing. The incentive also. But remuneration, whether the farmers do get that or not this time around, is really going to be a big question. And the other, of course, is going to be the implementation part of it. So this is just the first step taken that the MSP hike has come in. But there is a lot remaining to be seen in the next couple of months, especially until harvest, on how the scheme really works out. But thank you, Mr. Dhanuka and Mr. Chaturvedi. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your sense on what you make out, of course, of that MSP hike. With that, it's a wrap on this special show, but stay tuned for CNBC TV18 for more action coming up.